One, two, one, two. Can you hear this? Loud and clear.
Do you want to move your seat over, Adam? Just move your seat over.
Well, according to the rules, you can just make a God, I love references.
It feels really naked. Yeah, it's
Please state your name for the tape, and please make sure to not speak over anyone in any speak when I allow you to. Just out of interest, we have 48 voting places, if you're wondering. All casual voting places have gone, so we will not be redistributing those like normal. I think that's it. Brilliant, okay. We're going to start off with just green cards for the first few things, so if you have those at the ready. First things is minutes of the previous meeting. This can just go through in green cards, and we'll go through unless anyone objects to it, just raising the hand nice and clearly. So, those for. Any against? Any abstentions? Fair enough. Okay. Same again, we have the steering committee report. Again on green cards, those for. Those against? Any abstentions? Scrutiny committee and disciplinary report. Same again, those for. Those against? Any abstentions? State of the Union report. Raf, would you like to come up?
Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, welcome everyone. I'll keep it pretty quick. Well, I'll try to, I usually fail. I'll start with some updates on what's been going on, particularly sabbatical officers. So a recent success following a council motion in university environment and sustainability. After a debate that wasn't particularly heated actually, got the university to commit to increase the release of their investment information from an annual basis to a quarterly basis, which is good. Shame James Cameron's not here because he would have been like that the most. But oh well. We had to postpone our affordability week due to spacing issues, but to the first week back after Easter. So it's still running, and but it would have been a shame to get rid of Shijo's 50% off, so we kept that, and they sold around 500 meals a day, and it was madness, and I hope people got a taste, but it will be coming back hopefully. A few weeks ago, Jack, who isn't here, Summit, which has been organised for quite a long time in collaboration with PTOs. I thought it was an absolute triumph. For the first time ever, university directors from key departments, wellbeing, the career service, accommodation, equality and diversity, were able to hear real stories and be directly exposed to the changes that students, particularly from marginalised groups, want to see on campus. It was a positive atmosphere all afternoon and resulted in some fantastic actions being taken forward and some really great discussions. And I hope everyone who attended thought it was really valuable. There should be some really good stuff that comes from it. And I think there's a demonstration that a lot of change happens in here, but there's also a lot of change that can happen outside of council, particularly if we collaborate. So we shouldn't be afraid of that. Big shout out to Sophie. Grad Ball sold out in one day, which is the first time ever. It was a massive achievement, so well done, and particularly to marketing as well. That was a really big success. Hope people have bought their tickets. Sophie's probably going to be reminding people for the next 2 years good to see students excited by what we offer, and the grad ball in particular should be quite large. And of course the NU Festival of Culture, which again has been producing on social media every day, also organised by Sophie, has been a real success with over 500 sign-ups and a fantastic celebration of the diversity on campus that deserves to be recognised because far too often it's not. From my end, finally submitted after about 4 months of work, menstrual product initiative paper to the university. Thank you for the unanimous support 2 councils ago, I think. Need to try, yeah, 2 councils ago. And I have one more request to help me out. On the NUSU website, on the front page, there is a poll, which is essentially, would you like to see free menstrual products provided on campus by the university? It is a simple yes or no. Please say yes, but please fill it out because I need to play ball with the university. I've had to run through many, many hoops for this. It's taken ages, but if we get a large amount of responses, which I'd hope we should, then this could really help the proposal get through. Because if I present to them a poll which has got a couple of thousand responses, pretty much all saying yes, then they're going to find it difficult to argue against it. So please, please do fill that out. It's going to take 30 seconds of your time, and it's on the NUSU front page. If it doesn't go through, then we riot, so it's fine. Johnny's been working on Value for Money report to be submitted to the university, and he's made really good progress on extending the postgrad taught hours in the library. He's identified key weeks that will be useful to postgrad students, and we're hopeful change will be introduced. We're currently 9th in Bucks, so big up Maggie and all our sports clubs, big achievement. And Louise is doing absolute bits with her paper, some really great front pages, particularly the one about Operation Oak, which I hope we all know about, and the sort of money the university spending money on policing in Jesmond. So have your own opinion on that. But it's really great to see, and hopefully there's going to be some more freedom of information's coming soon. But really great work from everyone. I'll talk about elections, because I don't probably need to remind you too much, because due to Facebook's being overtaken. But elections for next year's sabbatical and part-time officers are next week, commencing at 12 p.m. on Monday and closing at, Lindsay, is it midday on Thursday? Midday on Thursday. This year there are a huge number of nominations, initially at 53, which was far greater than 25 last year. Unfortunately, we did have some dropouts, naturally, as you do, particularly in the postgrad officer position, but these are due to various issues, and whoever wins the position can hopefully iron out the creases. Despite this, we have some amazing candidates for all positions, and I have high hopes for next year. As voted for by students, I can confirm the charity that will receive the money from the 50p contribution from the university is Student Minds, which is great, big win for mental health. Big up the university as well for agreeing to our request and everyone who voted in that. And importantly, I shouldn't really need to stress this, but if you're not running, go out and vote when it opens on Monday. It's vital, and it really can bring real change on campus. Turnout was low for last year's election and the NUS referendum this year, and so it means that people at the top of the university want to say that students aren't really politicised anymore. They want to question sort of the legitimacy of it all, but I don't believe this is the case. And instead, I believe that next week is the real chance, the real opportunity that we show them that we care about our mental health, we care about our financial predicaments, we care about the well-being of us and those around us, our student experience, and we care about our campus. So please go and vote. Best of luck to all the candidates. It's going to be an amazing experience. That's the State of the Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Raf. Now we just need to approve that again with green cards, like all of the other reports. Have them at the ready. Those for? Those against? Any abstentions? Any abstentions? Okay. Right. General reports and updates on mandates. Again, like the other reports, just on green cards. Those for? Those against? Any abstentions? Right, so it's now time for part-time officers' end of term reports. Not that even. But I've got the other way around in my agenda. So that's us.
Oh, right. Did you want the subs or the part-time officers?
We'll do part-time officers. That's in front of me. Sorry, guys. So it's the part for you to question the part-time officers, much like you do with the SABs. They're going to come up, introduce themselves, update them on their work. Johnny will take the chair because I can't chair myself, so that's what's going on.
That's all right.
Okay, so if all part-time officers would like to just introduce themselves and maybe just provide a quick update on what they've been up to lately.
Should we go this way?
Start with Harris.
Hello, I'm Harris. I'm a disability officer. My quick update is I called out Tom Colker for being bad.
Rude.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adam. I'm Chair of Council. I was just there. What I've been doing lately is trying to investigate sort of students' engagement with Council. I've done a lot of surveys for those of you who've got sort of permanent voting places. So if you've been sent the link, please fill it out. It's really helpful to us. There's also student feedback sheets, which are now routine at Council. So if you could please also fill those out, that's great. The sort of whole point of this is to try and find out sort of what, to get more people along to Council, what need fixing about it, so we can implement some of these changes hopefully for next year.
Hi, I'm Grace. I'm Students for Faith and Belief Officer. I've been helping promote Discover Islam Week, which is next week. Please come along to the events if you want to. And I've been running a wrong campaign, so that's what I've been doing.
Oh, hello everyone. So second semester has been slightly slower, especially because I'm in third year and I've got a lot of dissertation work that I haven't done. But we've had some exciting things so far. So for example, I've started a report into BAME experiences at Newcastle after conducting a series of interviews. So a lot of them are very interesting. Hopefully be able to hear about them all in full detail at the end of the last council in May. And also we had a very, very good Stand Up to Racism event, which I'd shared, I think it was about 2 weeks ago now, where we had a lot of really good speakers talking about a very wide range of topics, and it was very well attended, so yeah.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm the Marginalised Genders Officer for this semester. I've been co-leading the This Is Not Consent campaign with It Happens Here. I spoke at the LGBT conference, which was the first ever, so well done to them. I've been involved with Raf and Jack's plans to improve the menstrual care on campus, and last week was International Women's Day, so I spoke at an event about politics and also went to the protest on the day.
Hi, my name is Pablo. I'm the International Students Officer. This term I have continued with the International Film Nights. I've been working with the LGBT society. We created an event where we use the intersectionality with the LGBT community, international films to create that event. Also, I've been working, well, I had a great focus on the summit we had here at the Union. My main points were basically the employability and the career services support here at university for international students. Also, the English support of the university to international students, basically the in-sessional English program, rethinking that program basically was my main focus. And yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Does anyone have any questions for the part-time officers? Please raise your hand if you have a question. Raf?
Chris, you recently attended a workshop on the Black Attainment Gap. What were some of the findings from that workshop, and what's your perspective on how a solution can be found?
So that workshop was actually extremely useful. I know that there are a few workshops which go around which basically tell you things that you already know, but this one was very, very good. Basically what happens is that we spoke about the attainment gap, not just for BAME students, but for other students as well, from minority backgrounds. And basically there's a series of conclusions that came into that we found out, and basically you have to approach the whole thing holistically, in the sense that there's mental health, affordability, etc., etc. These things come up repeatedly when students are struggling to close the attainment gap. Another way is to, one particular way was diversifying the curriculum, so a lot of students didn't feel like they could relate to their course because they weren't studying things which they could personally emphasise with. A lot of students also felt that staff were not sympathetic to themselves, and for example, trying to diversify staff, which again is a struggle in itself because there are certain prerequisites which you need for basically working at Newcastle University, and staff themselves also suffer from problems with affordability and with their own background, etc., etc. So there are a lot of different things that came up in that workshop, but no, it was a very good workshop, and I'm happy to talk to anyone about it after if they want to.
Any other questions to the part-time officers? Yep.
Yeah, just to follow up that point from Raf about the involvement with the stand up to racism, and racism in any form really. How would the union feel about actually physically going and supporting demonstrations and campaigns, not just on campus but within Newcastle and wider afoot, to tackle injustice not just at the university but across society, so we don't just keep in this bubble of Newcastle Uni and actually become a union?
Well, Matty, I absolutely agree. I think when it comes to tackling racism, I think it is slightly dishonest to say that we can tackle it solely on campus, because I feel that when we tackle racism, we have to fight it everywhere. You can fight it nowhere. I know that, for example, when I came into this, when I became racial equality officer, there was a big demonstration in Sunderland with the DFLA, the Democratic Football Lads Alliance, if you don't know about it, who are a racist hooligan gang who go around trying to start fights. And again, we might have it in a few weeks' time where the far right are going to march through the west end of Newcastle. So I think we really need to do is to start a network with other universities, so like Northumbria, Sunderland, Tyneside, Teesside, and Durham, so we can get some sort of cohesive resistance from students against these really seditious elements. Because we see that these things, they affect students not just on campus but outside. There was that horrible racist incident not too long ago, which, Raf, you did a very nice statement about today, and you released it on Facebook. So these are problems which we do actually have to come into contact with sooner or later. And I appreciate that you've brought it up, and I'm very happy to talk to you in detail about this later as well.
More questions?
Expand a little bit on the person being bad.
Sure.
Not.
I mean, if you want full details, it's both in my officer report and in my blog, so I won't go into extreme details. But the brief of it is that Tom Colker was invited to open up the NUSU Culture Fest that Sophie's done a fantastic job running, and currently still is running, so do check out last 2 days, so check out the events for that. Tom Colker published a job advert a couple of years back that used an ableist slur in it, and when called out by people, he decided to take the high stand and tell disabled people what slurs mean, which is problematic, and he's not learnt from it. So I went to the event he was invited to tell him, to talk to him, and basically, more or less protest him being there, because I think it's honestly, I think it's an insult to disabled students who are constantly failed by this university to actually succeed in completing their degree, that we then give an honorary doctorate to a guy who doesn't care about disabled people. Whatever he says, he actually said, "I have disabled friends, lol." So that's a thing he said. But I went to go confront him and protest him being there, and he wasn't receptive. So, I mean, for what it's worth, I feel like every society and representative of this union should boycott World HQ in every shape or form, but obviously that depends on your own morals and your own preferences.
I'll take one more question if anyone's got any. Yep.
I do have a question for Chris on racial equality, actually. I wanted to ask, has there been a consideration for expanding the current Culture Week? Because considering the caps is almost, say, in some classes are 30 to 40, which isn't a lot when it comes to people being able to interact with other cultures. Has there been consideration on, say, expanding Culture Week, either more events, or the events are able to hold larger people?
So is this in reference to the International Festival of Culture?
Yes.
Okay. I think Sophie's done a wonderful job so far in organising all this. There's been a very diverse range of activities which have been put on, I think, ranging from Japanese calligraphy sessions to jazz nights, which I think are very, very well attended. And I think you've done a very good job. I think trying to get people engaged, and as a result of that, marketing it very much more is definitely key. And I think getting society involvement is also absolutely key, and I appreciate that Sophie did a good job doing that as well. So I think there are a very good range of activities, but it's how we all from this room go out there and start telling people about them and start actually getting people there. To be fair, you know, your point as well that it could be arrangement. You can never have enough activities, to be honest, in this kind of thing. Multiculturalism is something which should always be celebrated. So yeah.
Sophie, would you like to say anything on that?
Yeah. If you want to ask me the exact same question in questions to SAB officers, that would be great. Because it's my event. So, yeah.
Okay. That's it then. Thanks to part-time officers, and I'll do the check.
Thank you very much, Johnny. So, same again, except we're going to invite the subs up. So it's exactly like what you just saw. This is your chance to ask them any questions about all the work they've been doing. They may give their notices. So yeah, please take advantage of this. You guys just like to start by introducing yourselves, starting from Johnny.
Johnny Hall, Education Officer.
Raf Marioni, President.
Louise Hall, Editor of the Courier.
Maggie Alstorb, Athletic Union Officer.
Sophie McDermott, Activities Officer.
And Jack isn't here, but as I've already said, he sent his apologies. So, any questions for any of your subs? Yep. Sorry, say again?
Would you prefer to stand or sit? Just got a question, sorry.
No, you're fine as you are.
Oh, that's nice. Well, in respect to Jack's not yet, so we've got to start off about mental health. In terms of this buzzword culture we've kind of developed at the university around the election of, you know, merely for votes around mental health to, you know, that's, well, not with everybody intended, but to actually ensure that the mental health campaign going forward for the university is not just a hashtag. We actually need to campaign and not just lobby the university, but take practical actions and put pressure on them as a union. And actually respect what this is as a union. I think there's a disconnect between the power that we can have as a union and going forward really. So yeah, it's just around funding and how you feel, you know, the mental health service on the ground. And my experience with Mind the Gap in the care support groups, it's an absolute crisis. Although people believe the stigma has reduced, people are suffering more and more every day. And to nearly, you know, have a mental health day, we need to actually see people being trained, staff members being trained, even staff members have come forward with mental health crises. Within the strike last year, which was not addressed, which was seen as an issue of the worker and not the university at all. So to really take this seriously and not just turn into this, you know, virtue signalling around mental health is a key thing. And again, I think that links in with the nature of the union itself. We aren't just in this bubble of university. You have to see there's a connection to Newcastle as a whole and wider society and actually questioning bigger issues. And I think there is good people here who want to do that, but the university are the ones. The university are, you know, with the money paying.
Sorry, is your question about funding or about what we're doing? Just
well,
so we know.
Well, that's what you should pick up within what I'm saying.
Okay. So in terms
of. I wasn't finished what I was saying. Sorry.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is the disconnect between the university bosses and the union to not just become saying yes to them, to actually represent students in the union. I feel there's a lot of people just being given money and saying yes, that's fine. That's it. So actually stand up as a union.
Okay, so in terms of, I don't know if you're speaking specifically about University Mental Health Day, which happened last week, that's a national initiative that takes place, and I think Jack and our sport development coordinator, Chris, did a really good job in putting some good events on and giving some awareness. From my perspective, obviously, like you say, Jack isn't here, but we're doing a really great project at the moment when it comes to physical activity. So obviously in my role, I massively believe that physical activity is a huge help towards mental health. So we're doing a project at the moment which we got some funding from Sport England for, which was I think it was in my most recent officer report. And that initiative is working on taking students with mental health challenges and encouraging them to exercise and putting them through some programs there. We've got a target to hit just over 600 students by May, and we're looking very positively at hitting that. And that was a really big collaboration between the union and the university to get that funding across the sports centre. In terms of staff, we're getting, certainly in the union, we've got some staff who are
mental health first aiders and are training 2 more. So I think that's kind of from what I can say, because obviously Jack's not here, that's what we're doing. And for me, because sports is such a big help with mental health, in my opinion, I think that's a great way that we're working collaboratively there.
I did meet with Jack earlier on, so I appreciate his event tonight.
I think it's just worth saying as well, the project going on at the university, Step Change, which I think believe 4 of the 6 SABs are involved in various different work streams going on with mental health there. I'm not involved myself, so I can't comment a lot, but I know that Jack's planning on putting more information out to students through articles on what's really happening with the university agenda on mental health at the moment, because we know that we can see ourselves what is going on and what needs tackling, but we can appreciate that it's difficult for students to see the bigger picture of what's going on when you're not standing with those committees. So Jack's really focused on letting students know what's happening right now.
And I think finally, just to really quickly round up, is that for a while the union has been telling the university that it's not just about adding more counsellors. I think that's been the approach for major institutions for quite a while, which is obviously problematic, but I think for a lot of lobbying in recent years and part of the Step Change project, which one of the streams I sit on, there's a lot more talk of sort of self-help sessions and sport and culture and methods to actually move away from just we'll just throw more money into counsellors. And the union's very involved in getting the university basically to catch up with the crisis that's going on.
I'd just like to respond to that. I think that's a good initiative in itself, in terms of digital help and self-help and this push towards mindfulness. But that cannot be excused for actual psychological treatment in the long run. It's this very new age kind of idea that have an app, self-help initiative, this kind of, under this Tory government of, you can help yourself out of it, but you can't. You need people on the ground who are trained, and the staff are suffering from that, and people being given 6 sessions at a time. That is disgusting. They're paying for the university. We're all paying for the university, and that is just not. It is not enough. People have died. Literally, that isn't reported. So all round the country, not just this union. I respect that. Yeah.
No, completely.
Okay. Yep. Go on.
It's another one on equality and stuff, so it's a shame that Jack's not here. But I guess it goes to all of you. Just in light of Harris's report, and obviously issues around speakers at a university event, I was wondering whether there's any scope for sort of producing guidance on external speakers and making sure that the equalities of students and also society as a whole are considered in that, because it feels like that kind of slipped through the gap a little bit, and I know that it's had a bit of a knock-on effect of how people feel that they're represented at uni.
Yeah, so we have quite an extensive external speaker policy that we have kind of collaborated with the university on, and I was the one that invited Tom Walker to come and speak because a lot of the work that he has done on BAME communities, on enriching kind of the intersections within Newcastle, the work that he does in his own nightclub, does actually speak to a significant number of students, and we actually don't have a no platform policy like anyone can come and speak at the university, which I think is, well, that's free speech. So I completely, and that's why Harris was 100% invited and told he definitely should come. He should definitely raise the issues of disabilities. It should definitely be a conversation. I will never ever shy away from a conversation. And I think if you're inviting an external speaker, you have to be prepared for that conversation and to learn. And certainly, like, I took on board everything Harris was saying, and I understood that, yeah, okay, it might have made a few students uncomfortable, and that's absolutely fine for me to take on that feedback. But I would never say that someone couldn't come to the university.
I would just like to quickly point out that obviously you've explained the benefits that he's perhaps provided to a lot of other people from underrepresented groups on campus. But as Harris explained in a blog post, like, it has left a lot of disabled students, whether that's visible or invisible disabilities, feeling like their representation doesn't count, and that really within the SABs and PTOs and literally everyone in uni, everyone should be on equal footing. So, like, regardless of, like, if someone had used a slur towards someone of a minority ethnic background, I really, really don't believe that they would be invited to speak on campus, because, yeah, free speech forever, but ultimately it is the university or the organisers' choice to invite them. And if you're representing students, you're representing all students, not just people from selected marginalised backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'd spoken to him about the incident which happened a few years ago, and I thought that he had learned, and that I thought that he was a lot more kind of aware of the situation and what he'd done wrong. I hadn't realised that Harris still didn't believe that he was, and I didn't realise how much it was going to impact until the day of the event.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, okay, that's all we have time for. So, in terms of...
Did get asked my question. Can I actually answer that question?
Do you want about the NU Festival of Culture?
Go on really quickly though.
Okay, so the NU Festival of Culture was a 2-week festival that I was like, oh, we should totally do this because we really celebrate the diverse amount of culture that we have here on campus. To answer your point about why it was capped, if you'd come to any of the events, not a single person ever got turned away because not enough people ever came. So that went to show me that a lot of students aren't engaged or really care that much, is what that initially gave me the impression of. Because it wasn't that we weren't marketing it, it wasn't that we weren't showing it off. No one was turning up to the events. And to say, yeah, I would love to put them on all throughout the year, and it's a lot of admin work, but it's so worth it. A lot of it was just done through the society, so I used them to put on the events. So the Japanese calligraphy was all done through the Anglo-Japanese Society. The Gaming Society are putting on an event tonight, Latin and Ballroom tomorrow. The Modern Languages Society have been amazing. So I would definitely encourage anyone and everyone in this room to get involved in those societies. And also, we're hoping, or I'm hoping, to pass on to next year's activities officer, whoever they may be, the opportunity to do the festival again, and definitely grow it and make it bigger. And I definitely want to see more involvement from the PTOs next year on actually running sessions and doing more within the festival itself. Cool. Sorry.
Any last quick things to add very quickly?
Come to the pub quiz after this.
Okay. Thank you, Sam.
Also, big up our student media for all the debates this week. Is there one more tonight or was it earlier?
It's tomorrow.
And obviously there's President one tomorrow, so do come to those.
Right. One thing I just want to make you aware of now. You could all return to your seats. We still need to continue. Right, I just want to make you aware that we're now going to do the reports. The agenda said do reports afterwards, but I thought it was prudent to have the updates first, just so you have a bit more information when it comes to the reports. So this is just like all the other reports. Back to the green cards. So part-time officers and term reports, they've submitted those. You heard a bit about what they've just said. So again, those for. Those against? Any abstentions? Okay. Again, the sabbatical officers' reports. Those for? Those against? Any abstentions? Right, okay. Just want to make you aware as well that the guillotine isn't set to finish at 15:15 because we had the meeting beforehand, so I just want to make you aware this may go up to past. Hopefully it won't, but we do have time for that if needed. We give full time to all the motions that we do have to discuss. So, on that note, moving on to the motions, sort of what we're all here to go to. Just give me a second. There we go. Right. We have no business motions, so we can move straight on to the constitutional motions. These are motions that require a 2/3 majority to pass. And the first one up is one proposed by Johnny, and it is the motion on officer reports. Conveniently enough. Johnny, if you'd like to come up and speak on that for us, you have a few minutes.
Okay, so this one's quite simple at the moment. Sabbatical officers are required to submit reports on the action, on basically what's going on at the executive committees. The information we provide is almost identical to what you could get in the minutes of those committees, which we make available online as well. So I'm proposing instead what we do is, instead of us writing reports on the executive committees, we instead just put the minutes through to be approved, and that way any issues with what's going on in the minutes can be raised instead of having to look at a report. It's very much in line with what a lot of basically executive committees at the university do. So if they've got subcommittees of those, then you won't, the whole report won't be written. That executive committee will just see the minutes and they'll just approve it. But it's not really decreasing our workload, because what we're doing is instead, at the moment we submit end of term reports, basically highlighting what we've done this term, and there's no opportunity in the interim of that, like say before the end of term report, say There was an opportunity between January and February for me to update unless asked in council on what I've been up to. So what would replace that? Sorry, not replace, because we're doing we're doing the minutes. What would replace that is basically us doing an update on sabbatical officer activities. And we think that would be much better use of our time. Would provide much more information to council. It would increase transparency, and given that, apart from today, I think we can agree there's probably been few questions to sabbatical officers this academic year. Hopefully, by giving us more of a chance to say what we've been up to, that'll stimulate more questions to sabbatical officers.
Right. So, any questions for Johnny on what you've just heard? Okay, let me sit down, Johnny. Okay, usually we have a procedural motion submitted in advance. It is an amendment submitted by Jamie Hampton. Jamie, would you like to just say something on this really quickly?
Yeah, so effectively...
Would you mind standing up, sorry, and saying your name for the minutes?
Jamie Hampton. So effectively, it's the case in which the executive committee minutes aren't entirely accessible. They are, but they're quite hard to find on the website, and not a lot of people have actually read them who I've talked to. So my procedural amendment would be to include them in the email, which is sent prior to the council, so we can read them and have a look at them, and it adds an extra air of transparency to the council.
That's what the motion's doing. It will be included in the email. That's why it says we approve the officer reports and executive committee minutes, so it will be sent out with all that. That's the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Jamie. Right, okay, so to debate the motion as it is, would anyone like to speak for it first? Go, Maggie.
Maggie Elstop, FS Union Officer. This just literally just makes sense, like it's just one of them. When I write my report, I literally just have my minutes right next to it, and I make them smaller. So essentially, you're getting more information if you get on minutes. There's also things that maybe you want more understanding on, or you want to hear more about, that'll be in the minutes that wouldn't necessarily be in the report to council. So it just makes sense.
Okay, would anyone like to speak against the motion? Okay, take one more for. Anyone else like to speak for the motion? Yeah, go on, Chris.
Grace Agar, part-time officer. I think this is a really good idea because it also prevents any spin that might occur in reports. We like to think that we're all really unbiased, but just having that transparency of actually being able to say what people said in the minutes is really useful, and yeah, prevents any unintentional bias coming through in the reports.
Right, and lastly, anyone against the motion? No? Okay. We're now going to go over to a vote for that. Please have your devices at the ready. Please make sure you're logged in. We'll just wait a minute, just to make sure everyone's ready so we don't have to rerun it. Sorry, just while we're doing that and waiting for people, would anyone sitting next to a radiator mind turning it off, because it's really warm in here? Those of you sitting next to a radiator, can you make sure those are off? I'm getting very warm.
Are you ready with the music?
Okay, last chance. We're going to a vote now unless anyone has any real issues. Okay, at the ready, you have the end to the end of the music to vote. 2/3 needed. As you can see, that motion has passed. Right. Moving on. Another contribution on implementing a community student's part-time officer. This motion. Sorry, my mistake. My papers are a mess today, it seems. Yep, so I've just got them. Okay, so my mistake. Sorry about that. Clarifications on the submission of repeat motions, also proposed by Johnny. Back again. 2 more minutes.
Can I just say, if anyone gets SAB next year, you'll thank me for that motion. Basically, so obviously, when you look at how repeat motions work at the union at the moment, basically, if it fails, it has to wait an interim of 1 sit, and then it can come back to council in whatever form. So what we want to do is we want to change it so that you can bring it back to the following council, but it has to have sufficient amends that sort of reflect the concern raised to that motion at student council. That would come to steering committee to decide whether those sufficient amends have been made. I'll use the perfect example of Jamie's motion on Ecosia. The first time it fell, basically it was asked for more information. Second time it had more information, so that was sufficient amends because that reflects what was said at council. So we basically want to create that space so that it can come back basically if the amends have been made, so it makes it like a quicker process to do it, but it's only allowed once. There will be an allowance to do it a third time if there's exceptional circumstances, but that's down to the power of steering committee to decide and for the proposer to make the case on that. But the usual practice will be, say, it's failed, go away, look at what these issues were, and then come back and do it again, and then steering committee will say, like, yeah, that's fine to go to council because you've made the change that council did want to see. Any questions on that?
Any questions, John? Anything you're unsure about?
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, would you mind standing up saying your name?
Victoria Mazzetta, school rep. I was wondering, would this include something about the amount of votes that it receives in the first time the motion is proposed? So, for instance, it would be allowed to be brought back the following session only if amendments are made, and maybe if the amount of vote it received the previous time could change drastically towards a favourable vote instead of a negative one. So, for instance, if it was like a 48 to a 52.
I don't think we should get into what the vote percentage was, just because a motion could fall by 100% because of one specific issue, but then once that issue is taken away, everyone suddenly likes it. So I don't think the percentage is indicative of how popular the motion really was, because the issues with a motion can be on particular points. So it's really just about saying, I've looked at it and I've looked at the concerns that council had, but there's things within this motion that make sense and I still think are worth putting forward to council. I've made those changes based on the things they didn't like about it, and then steering committee will look at it and go, yes, that's good, that's fine to come back to council.
Right. Any more questions? No? Thank you, Johnny. Feel free to go. So, we have 2 on each side for this one. Who would like to start off with us and go for the motion? Yep, go on, Grace.
So we talked about this at Officers Forum, and I don't particularly want to speak directly for Jamie, but we all came to the conclusion that even though for our individual motions we appreciate the current loophole that exists, it is better policy to have a motion like this go through so that it's more streamlined and we end up using the time that we have at council to serve the best interests of the students.
Right. Anyone like to speak against the motion? Go for it.
It's just a point of order, really. It's not connected to this. In terms of the questions to the SABs, before, is that in the minutes listed? Do you not list questions from the audience to the SABs? Yeah. Or was that all listed, yeah? Oh, I was just clarifying that up, yeah, because you were asking everyone to stand before and I wasn't asked to stand. So obviously it should just be in the same.
As if they know who you are.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if you have to address it every time. I was just
no, it's just one thing
right, nice one, yeah.
Minutes,
sorry, I'm just stupid with all the regulation.
No,
Thank
no
you.
worries. Happy to explain everything. What do we have just have? Any against? Okay, any for? Against?
It's not against, it's a question to kind of, I didn't realise it had been discussed by all the officers. Is it possible to ask a question now? Yeah, just asking how this would be different to a provision to refer back, like to refer a policy back. So, for example, if it, I'm trying to explain the way it works, and it's going to be a bit lengthy. So, instead of taking a vote on whether you're going to pass or fail the motion, taking a vote on referring that back to the person who did it, so that there's no confusion over whether it was voted down because of amendments that needed made or because it just wasn't a popular policy, and instead just having the ability to refer it back to the person.
So it's basically about it being materially similar. So if it was about just generally not a popular policy and it was just submitting the same sort of form, it was going for the same aims, and that overall just wasn't a popular policy, then it probably wouldn't be allowed back by steering within that same academic year. It can come back the next academic year, but if it's about particular points, then that's where the decision is meant to be made. And it's not about, I think, council having a vote on what they didn't like about it. It's just to reflect the concerns raised at council and steering committee, town council, so they're aware of that.
Okay, and then using the minutes from the council meeting to inform which changes needed made.
Yeah, it would say what council had problems with, and yeah.
Okay. Anyone else for the motion?
Hi there. I'll probably speak on this because I'm seconding this motion. So basically what it also means is that if you make insufficient amends, it can come to the next council immediately after. You don't have to skip a council, and it means that kind of the changes can happen quicker. So if we think, the motion's good, but there are significant issues that need to be addressed, and it can come back to the next council rather than just waiting again and changes being made faster. That's why I think it's a decent motion.
Lastly, anybody against the motion? No? Okay, so same again, over to a vote. Please make sure your devices are ready. 2/3 required, you have to the end of the music. Motion has passed. Right. Moving on. Another constitutional motion. Motion on implementing a commuting students part-time officer. So, this one is proposed by Sian and Johnny. Sorry about that. If you'd like to come up and speak on the motion, you have 2 minutes. Sorry about that.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Sean and I'm here to talk about implementing a commuting students officer. I'm extremely passionate about this as I'm a commuting student myself, and during my first year I found it incredibly hard to integrate into university life. This was a similar theme that I found with other commuting students. I've gathered testimonials which I've referenced in the motion, but you're probably wondering, who is a commuting student? Firstly, a commuting student is someone who typically lives at home. This could be with parents or guardians who commutes to university every day. The motion defines it as a commuting student from the North East who has lived at home and commuted to university for some or all of their degree. So it has to be noted that we're not talking about just students who take the metro every day, specifically commuting students that are coming from a little further afield, and this therefore comes with its own challenges. This can be anything from the price of transport to feeling like they don't feel like they have the true university experience. A report published by the Higher Education Policy Institute in December 2018 found that commuting students have poorer outcomes than those who move away from home and are less engaged and satisfied with their academic experiences. The rise in this demographic has led to other universities such as Birmingham and Hertfordshire implementing their own officers to represent the experience of those who commute to university. So I believe this position should be implemented here too, to recognise a demographic of students which aren't considered often enough. Commuting students often live at home to save money or for mental health reasons. This is what I found in the testimonials, and this is something that I myself can confirm. Commuting students aren't often represented, and this can be reflected in university events. Significant areas of the social calendar, like freshers, don't cater to these students and therefore focus on the large majority that live on or near campus. This is just one of the many issues, as well as inclusion and integration, that need to be recognised by the university. We need a representative that caters to commuting students, and ideally they'll be represented and implemented for the next academic year.
Okay. questions on that? Yeah, go for it, Maggie.
I don't think you maybe got a chance to say it in your 2 minutes, but what would you like to see them actually doing after you propose?
I think there's the actual challenges like transport and inclusion in certain events. Like freshers is really difficult for a first year commuting student because they have to arrive on campus alone, and I think there needs to be something done to help those students. But as well as that, it's more of a like symbolic thing as well, like actually having someone that's in the union to like represent this group of people which aren't represented at all. Like I literally couldn't find any statistics on these students. I think would be really nice to maybe include people more on campus. Yeah.
Just because I didn't get a chance to that motion, but some of the issues raised at the NUSU Student Summit, could you just quickly summarise what those issues were that you raised at university?
Okay, so firstly was the price of transport, which I know a lot of people have to buy the Network One pass, which is over £1,000 every year, and that's a struggle in itself. The second one was about storage facilities for students on campus. You have to stay for like society events until like 9 PM sometimes. It can be really hard to join in when you don't have anywhere to put your stuff. And the third thing, oh God, what was the third thing? I can't remember. Oh yeah, accommodation for Freshers Week. So my suggestion was that we would be able to assign halls to commuting student freshers where they could meet and be able to kind of go to events together and maybe have the option of maybe staying overnight just to meet people in like halls that aren't like filled yet. So yeah.
Any other questions? Question, sorry.
I have a question on, I guess, financial difficulties and also the mental health that's also raised up for commuting students. What I'm slightly confused about is that wouldn't the mental health aspect of it, wouldn't that already fall under welfare? While the financial aspect, wouldn't that be better suited to more of the financial arm of the union or the university rather than, say, a PTO?
I think like you need someone constantly tackling these issues, just because I'm the only person who's raised it so far, and I think that's because there's a group of us that feel really disenfranchised with the union, and I think if they had like a person to go to talk about these issues first, then maybe they'd be able to raise it with the relevant SABs, just because I don't think some of the SABs understand sometimes that this could be an issue specifically for a smaller group of people, because they have to maybe pay more or they feel more distance from the union, therefore their mental health ends up being worse, or things like that.
Point as well, just that a lot of the part-time officer roles sort of do fall under the welfare and equality remit. It's just that they work in partnership with that to tackle those issues. So just be confident in that.
Okay. Any final questions? No? Thank you very much. Okay, would anyone like to speak for the motion? Yep, at the back there.
Which one at the back, sorry?
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
Adam's ready to see that.
Okay. Right. Hello, I'm Adam Lowry, and I am a commuting student. I've been commuting in for the past 6 years, probably. I forget sometimes. I just want to say I think it's a really, really great idea, and I wish someone had come up with it sooner. I'd just like to add as well 2 more things which I would like to see the role doing, and I could see easily happening, is I'd like to see better communication and cooperation with Newcastle City Council, especially in the outlying areas, because I think any cooperation with the council is great. And secondly, as someone who uses the metro and is constantly screwed over by the metro breaking all the time, I just think having this officer would be a good jumping off point so that we can, hold the local transportation companies to account and lobby for better services. Thank you.
Anyone like to speak against the motion? Yep, go for it, Raph.
I just want to this is I sort of should have asked some questions, not necessarily against, because to be honest, it's a pretty strong motion. I just want to sort of point out that completely of local students feel disenfranchised by the union. That's the reality of it. Obviously, that's something that we need to be doing better. I do think, though, that there are lots of methods of bringing in change and representing people. It's not necessarily SABs and PTOs. So I think being mindful of that is important. But crucially, I think, particularly from a SAB perspective, yes, I wasn't particularly aware of these issues, and I think it's important that they are raised. But all it would take is a meeting at the beginning of the year for 2 hours or an afternoon spent with a sabbatical officer. I'd like to think we're approachable. I'd like to think that we've put in effort to be approachable this year. And all it would take is 2 hours, 3 hours, an hour with a sabbatical officer to raise these issues so that we're better educated and we can do stuff about it and go to the City Council. The City Council aren't usually that great at cooperating, but I just want to stress that if you are from a group and you feel like we're not representing you, feel like do feel disenfranchised, then I'd like to think that sabbatical officers are receptive to ideas and are approachable. By all means, have a local student, have a commuting student PTO, but also remember that sabbaticals do a job. We do work full time, and the main point is actually representing students. And we get bored of our meetings with old people. We do, we want to be representing students. So, whatever viewpoints you have, meet us at the beginning of the year. Outline your issues that you want tackled through the year, and we can do our best to solve them. Cheers.
Not really against. So, anyone against the motion?
That wasn't against the motion.
How?
That was against the motion, sorry.
Sorry, I'm getting confused. Anyone for the motion? My mistake. Yeah, go for it,
we did discuss this a little bit last council and also in Officers Forum about the fact that there is an argument to be made that lots of different groups of students at the university could have a PTO. There's a bigger remit for having more PTOs, but I think the conclusion we came to, and especially among the PTOs currently, is that it's about demand. And we do have the commuting students at the moment telling us that there is a demand for this position. Maybe in 3 years there won't be that demand anymore, and student council might choose to remove that PTO position. Equally, there are other liberation groups that the issues that we face ebb and flow, and the PTOs are a more movable group of people. But we are being told that this is something that the student body wants and will be useful for the next year, and maybe a bit longer than that, maybe not. But I think it's a really good motion to go through to address this acute problem. It's come to a crisis point, as it were, when we need somebody who it is their full job to focus on these issues. The SABs are great. I think you do amazing work, but you have much bigger reach than we do. And just having someone for that period of a year, 2, however long it is, to focus really specifically on these issues would be great.
Right, anyone against the motion? Okay, right, we're going to go over to a vote on that one. Say again? I did say 2 on each side, I'm afraid. We'll take a last question then.
Not to you, just procedural. What's the process for making amendment? You say that you want to, and then you can go.
Amendments can be made at any time. You come down to the front and make it. I will allow you at this time to make an amendment if you'd like to.
I'd quite like to talk to the person who proposed it first.
Well, you make an amendment and they say whether they accept it.
Yeah.
And if they don't, we vote on it.
In that case,
so that's
can I
fine.
come and talk to Kenya about it?
Okay. And just while that's going on, I'll make a point forward. If that's okay,
yeah.
I've asked. Just the crucial nature of the topic.
Yeah, I'll come up again with
If I did take the on floor, it had to be done again, so I'm afraid. Thanks for Right. Okay, so there has been a procedural motion submitted in the form of amendment. I decided to accept it, and so it's now up to the proposer whether it goes through as a friendly motion or an unfriendly one. The amendment is to add an extra responsibility onto this role, which would be to them also to be on the community exec. So, proposer, would you take that as a friendly motion? Do you accept it, or would you rather it went to a vote?
Yeah, accept that.
Brilliant. Okay, so that now goes through as a friendly motion, which means. Okay, so it being a friendly motion means we can just vote on it straight away once you're ready. Just if you're on the community council, if it was an unfriendly motion, we'd have to debate the amendment, vote on that, and then debate on the motion as a whole, just for the sake of clarity.
Would it be possible for Rob to expand on what that means?
Committee exec is a meeting that I chair. And you have community reps from different areas in the city, and you basically discuss a lot of the time issues with the city council, issues with the city council, which would be particularly relevant for the commuting student. So travel, things like professional issues in particular areas. So I think it'd actually be really good thing for them to attend. Yeah.
Okay, so just to draw attention to it, it's part B on appendix. It's be a member of Student Union Council, the Officers Forum, Welfare and Campaigns, Executive Committee, and Community Exec.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2/3 required. Is everyone ready? Have your devices ready? Please wave at me or get my attention if you're not ready to vote on this. Everyone ready? Okay. Moving onwards. Right. Sorry, but do we have more? We do have more to get through. We have another constitutional motion. This motion is on the part-time officer's name change. So, Johnny, if you'd like to come up again.
Okay, so this one is basically proposing a name change for how we do the part-time officers. It's really about enhancing the training that we offer to part-time officers and the promotion of that. I feel that the term part-time officer can be confusing to students in terms of what they actually do. If you're not in that NUSU bubble, that's the kind of feedback that we've heard. So we want to make it clear what the part-time officer role is. But there is a disconnect in the part-time officer team slightly between what you've got with the scrutiny officer and the chair of council and the rest of the officers. So the rest of the officers really focus on liberation type issues for students, whereas the other two, they focus on the democratic processes within NUSU. So what we want to do is we want to change those 7 roles there to now be referred to as the liberation officers. That would be the real change with it. And then the other 2, we would change the name of the scrutiny officer to the chair of scrutiny so that we had the NUSU chairs. So it would be clear from our website how each of the officer roles slightly work. Your sabbatical officers who are representatives for a year, elected to work here for the year. Your liberation officers to focus on liberation issues for students. And your chairs of scrutiny and council to focus on democratic issues. And it's really to ensure that when we train the officers in September, which we do, which George Watkins leads on with the SABs, what we do is we offer specific training for liberation officers that is more tailored to their area, and then a better training session for the Chair of Council Scrutiny Officer. Nothing really changed beyond that, because there'll still be an officer team. We'll be still convene officers forum where we can talk about things like student council motions, key issues within the union. So the real change is just clarity for students and ensuring that what we're doing is accessible and clear, and to basically just for that enhanced training really, and promotion of the officers and the work they do. Yeah, and I'll probably put in I'll need to put in a procedural motion to say that it needs to be amended to reflect the new PTO which we've just created now, and which would fund deliberation similar to students with parents, guardians and carers officer, and that's why it would fall into that remit and not the democracy side.
Right. Any questions for Johnny? Okay. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Go for it. Sorry, say your name.
Alice Fish. I think that it's a really good idea because it will mean that not only will it be clearer to students who they need to talk to if they have concerns regarding liberation issues, and who the officers that they should speak to for that, but it, as Jenny said, it would allow better training and more specific training to make sure that all, well currently known as part-time officers, will be able to have better training and do their jobs better and serve our student body more effectively.
Anyone like to speak against the motion? Right. Was that okay, Stephen?
Not so much against the sentiment of the motion itself. It's more just the idea that we keep changing names for things, and students are starting to get really confused about what certain things are. I did Rag Week, and I was continually asked to meet people in men's bar. I work, I'm a chair on an SVC, and I'm continually asked where the SSC is. And people won't entirely know where the PTOs have gone if we turn them into liberation officers, is all I'm going to say. I like the term liberation officer. It's okay, but it will confuse people again, I think. And I think you will find people won't know what necessarily they are again.
Okay, would anyone like to speak for the motion? Yeah,
Yeah, I think in this motion, the PTOs would be heard, the current PTOs. And I think more or less the consensus is that we agree with this. This clearly gets the message that we want to get to people about our goals. So think about that, think that we all agree on this, we all think it's okay.
Right, anyone against it?
Can I ask for a point of clarification?
Yeah, go for it.
We would still be the part-time officer team, but under that it would be liberation officers and chairs of council and scrutiny? Or would it just be
more as the officer team as a whole.
Okay.
So you'd be like the volunteers. So in the publicity, it was clear state that he's a volunteer. So on the web page, it would just have SPAC officers, liberation officers, chairs, and it would state that we all work together.
Okay.
Would it be clear that chairs are still sorry.
Yeah, would it suit the issue just raised if we put in a procedural motion to say that have the sabbatical officers and the part-time officers, which consist of the liberation officers and the chairs?
Because it's not entirely clear that the chairs aren't.
So in essence, we would subdivide the part-time officer team.
That makes it even more confusing. I feel like that doesn't really help with the whole issue. I think because it's got then you've got part-time officers who are liberate. Yeah, I'd be a bit.
Okay.
It's somewhat,
One step too far.
already making a subdivision.
Yeah, just.
So let's respond as well. I don't think I'm going to be worrying where the part-time officers have gone. It would just for new students, this would be the structure, and anyone who's involved will know how it's being presented now. It would be clear that these are all the officers of the union. There is like the slight change with the chairs, but we've already got a chair of council that would just be making a chair of scrutiny. There wouldn't be any significant confusion cause for students.
Just one question: how would you make it clear that they're still all volunteer, i.e. part-time roles?
Because
you would still advertise them as part-time roles.
It's in the results to make sure that it's promoted that these are voluntary roles that students volunteer and undertake for a year.
Okay. Any of that point of clarification?
Oh no,
just to speak for.
Hang on, just wanting to explain just what just happened there. There's a point of clarification which can be asked at any time. Just if you're new here and wondering what just happened, just raise your hand and it will break the traditional format. Yeah, okay, now, were we on 4? Yeah, 4. Yeah. Sorry.
Just to address that matter before about what is the point of changing names for things, and everybody will get confused. And the men's bar point, the rationale behind that, obviously you have to change things when they're inappropriate for anything to go forward. And I think it's stuck in the past, that kind of thinking of, oh, well, it might cause confusion. I think it might actually engage the students better and actually feel more part of the union, instead of this archaic kind of, oh, we don't want to upset people with a name change, but I understand.
I
understand that
the men's bar is perhaps a bad example, but SSC and SCC is a pretty valid.
Yeah, fair.
Suited format, please, sorry. Those against? Anyone against? Yep, go for it. Sorry, say your name again.
Maybe Alexander Kante. Maybe it's just a bit of American ignorance and American sensibility, but I'm kind of confused on why the name change to Liberation Officers. I feel like it's almost sort of, from a family that comes from a third world country, I feel like it's almost a sort of Western arrogance in a sense to call them Liberation Officers, to say that one person of one group is going to somehow liberate all the other surrounding groups around them, and so to speak. I think the name is a bit, as I would say, arrogant. I don't think it makes much sense, the name change from part-time officers, which you are, a part-time person who officiates our officers, the issues that you're around, rather than liberation. I understand the word liberation society, but I don't understand the word liberation officer, so to speak.
As a part-time officer now, your role is about liberating the group you're representing. Of course, you're not trying to liberate other groups. It's not anything to do with that. And I understand what you're saying, but I think the name, it just more encompasses what you're actually doing already. Like, I'm marginalised genders officer. I'm trying to liberate marginalised genders officers, so we don't have to have this role anymore. It's more about making it more in line. What we do.
Just before we continue the debate, we do have another procedural amendment. So the amendment reads, for the community students PTO to be listed as a liberation officer. That's just to update what we've just sort of gone through, make sure everything's ready with that.
That's from me, so I approve that.
Yeah, easy enough. So just as clarification, that has now been added to the motion. So we're just waiting for that to be updated, so just hang on 1 second. If anyone has any questions now about anything, now's a good time to ask them in terms of procedure. Brilliant. Where is it added to? Right. Point number 3.
Sorry, interrupt. 1 second, can you just...
Yeah, sorry to rush it.
It's in the notes.
Yeah. Okay, so that has now been added to the motion. Brilliant, yeah. Just before we move on to that, just bring your attention to it. It has now been added. Point 8 under the notes. Number 8 is Commuting Students Officer, along with all the other liberation officers, in terms of the motion. Okay, so what was the last point we have? Against, wasn't it? Yeah, so now another 4, please, if anyone. Yep, do you? Yeah, you can go.
Right, just in case anyone hadn't guessed.
Do you mind standing, sorry?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Lisa Stansfield, I'm City and West Community Rep. Just in case anyone hadn't guessed from my constant annoying questions, I'm a first year and just getting involved in the SU, and personally to me, I think renaming it to Liberation Officers just makes it way clearer what PTOs do. Like, when I first heard, like, part-time officer, I kind of assumed that they helped out the SABs, and maybe it was the SABs that you would go to or whatever. And obviously we do talk to, through SSEs and stuff, we talk to a lot of students who have no idea where to go with various liberation issues that they have on campus, or perhaps they assume that they have to go straight to Jack and there's no one specifically for them. So just making sure that people know that there are people whose jobs are specifically to help out their marginalised group would be really helpful. And obviously it is a name change, but it's a name change to something that makes it a little bit easier for people to understand what goes on in the SU and who's there to represent them.
against? Yep, go for it, Stephen. Yep. So, Stephen, I said.
All I would say on that is, well, speaking against actually, I would just say I don't quite understand the motion in the way that it says changing the name will improve training. I can understand it will give the sort of idea that, oh, this is your role, you're supposed to liberate this group, but I don't really understand how that's going to improve the physical training that NUSU will impart on any student. And I also, on the point of you don't know what you wouldn't know what a PTO does. I mean, you could say that about a SAB as well. What does the term SAB mean?
It's very confusing.
Well, it is a little bit. I would say that we look at, say, the disability officer role or the LGBT officer role, faith and belief, whatever. You can look at that and you can make a wild guess as to what that officer probably does in its role without knowing that it's even a part-time officer or a full-time officer.
Can I just
Take one more for one more.
Good point of clarification, because obviously I can't speak for or against. Just to let you know, in all of the elections promotion this year, stopped using the term sabbatical officer for that reason. So always listening, you see, because students don't know what that means.
But full-time officer.
So we use full-time paid officer actually in brackets, and part-time unpaid. Yeah.
It's not a simple case of the role's going to enhance training by, it's going to enhance training just by changing the name. It's by creating clearer structures, and through that we will change the training structure that we have in place. It'll all be, nothing really will change other than the way it's promoted. We'll have that separate training, and then we'll also have sessions for all the chairs, the liberation officers and the sabbatical officers to get together. I think with regards to the name of the sabbatical officer, that's a different conversation in itself. I don't think motion should fall because people have a problem with something else. It should be judged on its own merits. And like Lindsay says, we've made a move to promote it as a full-time officer now anyway. And this has been done through consultation with the part-time officers who had the chance to make any amends to it, and they have made amends to contribute to that. And it's a really good example of how we collaborate together to move in the step forward to really enhance the promotion of the work they do and make it clear and accessible to all students what they get up to.
Last one against, anybody?
Just point of, clarity. I wanted to ask, does the commuting officer count under liberation officer?
Yeah.
If so, what are they liberating people from? I'm a little confused on that point.
Integration during Freshers Week. So we're liberating them out of those circumstances. I think honestly, the term liberating, we're not fixing anything. And honestly, I think we would all hold our hands up and say that we can't speak for the whole community, but a lot of what we do is listening to listening to students for who we've been elected to represent and bringing those issues forward. So in terms of what you were saying, I get that it sounds a bit kitschy, but we're not coming at this with the point of we're going to solve racism by having a racial equality officer or that sort of thing. We're just looking to specifically address the needs of those groups and trying to liberate individual students out of the circumstances they find themselves in as a result of their characteristics that might make them fall into marginalised groups.
It also actually falls on the NUS for those types of officers as well, so we're just keeping an eye on what the rest students do.
Right. Against for the last on this. Yep, Jamie, go for it.
Jamie Hampton. So I'm just wondering why the term liberation officer has been chosen, because I think it kind of creates a bit of a divide between the student union and the actual university. If you have the student union and the student union officers are liberation officers, it kind of creates what I perceive as a bit of conflict between the student body and the establishment of the university. If you need to be liberated from that, it generates a lot of conflict.
It won't be causing any issues with the university because we've set on meetings with the university constantly. They're aware of issues in which students want to be liberated from. They've got a Dean of Social Justice, Dean of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. They are very much aware of that there's issues that students face. And they don't see it as, I know from experience in sitting in meetings with them when we're talking about things like diversifying the curriculum. I sat in a very good productive meeting with the University Education Committee yesterday, and they're very much aware that the steps being made to work on those issues. So it will not, from experience, I can wholeheartedly say it will not create a divide with the university by having these titles.
Can I just come back on that quickly?
We're going to go to a vote on that. Lots of discussion on that one. Okay, again, constitution motion requires 2/3 majority. Have your devices ready. You have to the end of the music. Sorry, say that again.
Is this a 2/3 majority motion?
Yeah, it's a constitutional 2/3 majority required. Yeah, everyone ready? Everyone ready? Yep, okay. Over to the vote. That motion has passed, albeit just about. Right. Okay, we now have an ordinary motion. This means that have an ordinary motion. This means a simple majority is required, as opposed to the 2/3 majority. So bear that in mind. Okay, so this motion reads: for NUSU to lobby the university to change the policy on assessments and feedback. This motion was by, sorry if I get your name wrong, Carries Rose?
Carries Rose Thomas.
Yeah.
Do I do the speaking thing now?
Yeah, 2 minutes from whenever you want.
Yeah. Okay. I handed in 2 essays today. If I had handed those essays in even 1 minute late, it could have completely ruined the degree classification that I have maintained and worked for the entire time I've been at university. I think that's pretty harsh. I was speaking to some of my friends at other universities and realised that I literally don't know anyone else who has this horrible system whereby if you hand your essay in 1 or 2 minutes late, you get capped at 40. I know a lot of people who have systems like the one I've proposed here, where it's more of like a sliding scale, so like you still are penalised for late submission, but I think it's a lot fairer. I think it would improve mental health issues that people have with deadlines. I know a lot of people find them stressful, I do, and I think it feeling like less of a life or death situation would be good. I also think it would decrease the number of just in case PECs people submit, and I also think that it would be good for, I can't remember what my third point was. Oh, have I run out of 2 minutes?
No, you haven't, just got a minute.
I did have another point. 1 minute, this makes me seem stupid. What did I say? Mental health, just-in-time PECs. What? Oh my god, yeah. So in the real world, if you send a file to someone like 3 minutes late, you don't lose your job. And I think that if university is supposed to set you up for the real world, then we should do that properly. Sorry about that.
No worries, you had plenty of time. Right, any questions on that? Yep, Stephen.
How would it work? Sorry. How would it work with PECs? You might be able to help out. Like, for example, if you got a week extension, would it then start applying as if that was the deadline, or would
Yeah,
this,
like
yeah.
the PEC system and the the PEC system and the late submission systems are completely independent of themselves. Go for it.
Point of information. You know you can't self-certify for 7 days.
Yeah.
So you don't need a PEC for that if you want to self-certify an illness. That might really help in the future. I wish I only found that in anyway. I was like, what?
Yeah, I think the PEC system is very flawed as well, but that's not what this is about.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Pablo?
Pablo, this is just a point of clarification. We spoke about this in the faculty, well, a document was circulated in the social science faculty 2 years ago. Basically what that document was saying is that they investigated how is the policies in other universities of the Russell Group, and Newcastle University has one of the hardest policies on this, just as a point of clarification.
Right, any final questions? Yeah, Johnny.
Just about this, but it says to use a sliding scale system used by other universities like Nottingham and Manchester. They have different percentage changes, but then you say 5% per working day. Would it be alright maybe change that just so that we need to go to negotiation with the university on this, and I think it makes it easier for consultation. Then user isn't stuck to having to dictate that it has to be 5%. So I think it'd be clearer in terms of what we set out to do if it was said whether a student loses a percentage of their mark per working day.
Yeah,
rather
I
than
think
5%.
Yeah, no, the reason I went, because I looked at it, some people do 5 marks, some do 5%, and some do 10 marks. The reason I went with 5 is because 10 will assure you dropping down a degree classification per day, and I thought that was too harsh, so I just put that in as like the one that I thought was best. But yeah, I don't mind that changing, because obviously negotiations are difficult.
Yes, maybe, yeah, I just think we want to be clear when people look at council documents and what we set out to do. We can't guarantee that we'll get that 5%. That's something we work towards, but obviously your university is 10%, and I think we have like an open space when we go in negotiations on that. So maybe, so at least you lose a percentage of that mark per working day would be better.
So, are you taking that as a friendly issue?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So, yeah, go for it.
Just a question. Just the proposal really. Matty Lacey, by the way. Basically, can this motion be taken forward to kind of question more fundamental issues with the PEC forms as well in the long run, in terms of people being penalised or not understood, the PEC not being significant enough in terms of really like.
Sorry, what's the question?
Will this be used towards a bigger, could it be used to be worked on independently away from council? Would you be open to going to further lengths to get this more fair for students?
Sorry,
will you be willing independently to work on this outside of the council to improve student policy more?
Well,
or just
like
this
that,
policy?
isn't that what happens when the motion passes? It leaves council and they lobby the union.
But even away from the council?
The university.
Away from the council, yeah. If the council do not do anything, or it just turns into being suppressed by the people in charge of the council, not just the officers, then further measures in place.
I was a bit confused what you mean about the council, sorry.
This?
Yeah, this council and then the meetings after that, in terms with other students to get more feedback. Yeah.
I mean, I'm finishing uni in 6 weeks, so...
I was basically using the platform to make a point. It wasn't. It was a warped question, but it was a point. Thank you.
This would be in my remit to take away the look at, like Pablo said, it's got in his FAC, that this would be for me to speak to the universities, look how it's done there, any chances they've got, take it around faculty education committee consultation, any other consultation where necessary, and then take it to university education.
If that doesn't work from your behalf, just if it works beyond this. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So as you can see, it's been replaced as a percentage of the working mark as opposed to 5%. Okay, so with that in mind, we'll take our first 4. Yep.
So who did
for the motion?
There was Scarlett and Charlotte.
Yeah, so just keep your hands up. Those for the motion. Yep, Scarlett.
The change that was just made. Students do currently use a percentage of their mark. So could it be like less than a certain percentage? Because obviously you do.
It's saying per working day.
Because of the working day, but that's okay.
Yeah, because it says per working day, that's the difference, because it's not just 7 days after.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Just double checking. That would be any confusion.
Okay. So those 4, that was more question. Yes, go for it, Charlotte.
I think this is a really good idea. I think a lot of the time you might find you literally just need one more day if you've been really ill and you can kind of cram in, and I think sometimes it can really benefit you to have that little extra time without worrying that you're going to drop down to 40%, which, you know, a lot of courses is just barely a pass. And if you've been working at a higher standard and you don't want to let your grade fall just because you've had a bad few weeks or a bad time, I think this is a really good idea. I think it's a lot fairer, helps people's mental health, and again, will reduce the need for confusing PEC forms. So I think this is a really good motion from Paris.
You may sit down, by the way.
Oh, cheers.
Okay, those against the motion. Anybody? Yes, Jason.
Jason Carr. Yeah, I just think this has a big flaw in it in terms of marking work. So currently, you can delay your work, up to a week after submission. If you're a minute late, you might as well wait a week to submit it and make sure it gets at least that minimum mark. If you're losing a percentage a day, if it was 5% as initially proposed, it could take up to 20 days before your mark is worth 0, which means it could be 20 days before someone submits their work, which could delay the time it takes for a lecturer to mark the work and return it to a student. So submissions of results could be delayed as a result of this.
Disappointment for me. I think what might be worth amending the motion again was just to say that would be for 7 days. So it's to change it from that cap at 40. To change it from that cap at 40 immediately for 7 days. Because after 7 days it goes down to 0. It would be just basically that you'd only have those 7 days where it's getting reduced. Then after that your mark would be 0. So students would have an option outside of that.
And also just a further point, at the moment you can, like, I think that's a good idea, but at the moment you can get 2-week extensions and whoever's marking your work can still mark it in time for the turnaround. Like, it doesn't actually take 4 weeks to mark a piece of work. It's that deep.
What's going on here is we just have another procedure. Okay, so it's now changed to whereby a student loses a percentage of their mark per working day that their submission is late for 7 days. It's just to clarify what Johnny just said and add it into the motion and make it very clear. That has been taken as a friendly procedure motion. Yeah. Okay. So that will now be added to the motion. Any questions why we're just adding that? This is your chance for them. Yep, go for it, Chris.
Sorry, I probably should have pointed this out slightly earlier actually when we were taking questions, but in this workshop that Raf and I went to, which was mentioned at the very beginning of this council session, I actually managed to speak to the EDI leader for the HAS faculty, and basically Dr. Jane Webster, and she fully supported this for the various reasons which Karen has brought this up. She says that if she was here, she would be here voting yes. So the last on Karen's side. So there you go.
So, as you can see, that has now been added in. We will now go and have anyone else for the motion. Go for it, Grace. Sorry.
Hi, Grace Albert.
No, sorry. Could we actually hear from someone who hasn't spoken yet today?
Sure.
There was only Carla and Grace who have just both spoken. So, yeah.
Should I go then?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that will be very helpful for people, particularly who have long-term health conditions, who find that their condition fluctuates. I'm one of those people. It's more of a holistic thing, but the schools that you're part of and your tutors will keep a track of how many PECs you submit, and I think you can only self-certify once for a PEC. So for example, if I had a really bad fatigue day and I knew that I could get everything finished if I only had one more day, I would take that 5% rather than submitting a PEC form and having that be the only time I could self-certify for that PEC and having that on my record, as it were. So I think it's a really good idea to also help students who suffer from long-term fluctuating conditions.
Okay. Anyone against the motion? Yep, at the back there. Sorry, in the red. Yeah.
Amelia Webb. I just want to pick up on a few things which other people have said. Like Karis, you raised the issue of mental health, and Grace, in terms of like long-term health conditions. I find that my long-term health conditions affect things like my concentration and fatigue and that sort of thing. And I think that if we had this system in place, then it would penalise myself and students like me for doing things like leaving stuff to the last minute and putting things off. I think that what we actually need to be focusing on is reforming the PEC system and looking more closely at the mental health services which the university provides. I don't think that this is a solution at all, and I think that we need to be looking at other avenues to solve this.
We'll take one more on either side. Anyone for? Yeah. Sorry, Alice. Yeah.
I just want to say that obviously the PEC system really does need to be reformed, but I don't think adding this system of changing how we cap marks would necessarily impact the PEC system. And I think that people should still be looking to improve the PEC system and fight for more fair PEC services. But I think that this will still help a large number of students. And I've had experiences before where I think that this would have really benefited me, and I think a lot of my friends as well when it comes to stress. But I also think that obviously the PEC system, there are major issues with it, and I think that we need to look at that as well.
But basically, any sort of long-term issues, the university wants saying that should be covered in the student support long-term thing. I think some of the issues then that have been raised around mental health, that's I imagine that'll benefit anything that kind of comes up maybe in the short term that's not a long-term issue. Yeah, not be advised.
Okay, last up against on that. Yeah.
Well, Victoria wants to talk. Normally it'd be all for extra days for deadlines, but I think this would prove unfair to those students who maybe want to submit on time and do submit on time, but maybe struggle to get higher marks. Maybe someone who only gets 50% of their assignments but submits on time. And what about them when someone maybe has those extra 2 days and managed to do better than them because they're only penalized 5%? I think this will only take out of the accountability of students. At the end of the day, we might be students, but we're still adults, and we should be held accountable for the choices we make. So we are given advantages like the PEC system, which gives a couple of students more time to submit their assignments. But I don't think this will solve the problem. I think it will only prove to be unfair to other students who maybe do submit on time, but still get lower marks.
People don't submit PECs because of the choices that we make. We submit PECs because of mental illness, because of physical illness, and because of bereavement. That's why people submit those things. It's not because we're making bad choices, because bad things happen.
Sorry, can only have questions as in on things, not just another points for and against the motion. So unless it's about what is actually...
Clarification.
Yeah, is there a point of clarification?
Yeah,
Okay,
I didn't mean that people submitted PEC requests because of their choices. What I meant is that that system is in place if a student needs it, but I think this would prove difficult to balance out with students who might submit on time but still get lower marks, and people who maybe...
So that wasn't the point of clarification.
Can I do that?
Is it a point of clarification?
Yeah.
Okay.
Johnny, you'll know better than me on this, but I was looking at the guidance for PECs today because I am struggling, pals. And it said that generally long-term health conditions, including mental health conditions, for which you have a student support plan, will not be considered grounds for a PEC submission.
Because it's supposed to be covered in the long term. That's the direction the university is heading in that one. The PEC's meant to be like anything that's sort of out of control. So they're wanting to put more support into the student support plan so that it's covered earlier on in it and it's supported throughout the year rather than just in that one instance.
So are flare-ups of mental health conditions considered grounds for a PEC or not?
If it probably wasn't it's a bit of a tricky area, but basically if it wasn't previously identified in the student support plan, then that probably then would be grounds for a PEC. But then you probably look at the student support.
So if you have a student support plan for a long-term health condition, which might not affect you year round, but as you said, it like ebbs and flows, then a flare-up generally by the university wouldn't be considered grounds for a PEC because it was pre-registered.
I can clarify. So that would be at the discretion of your personal tutor. So one of the first things they ask when you apply for a PEC form is, do you have a student support plan? Because the purpose of a student support plan is to alleviate the need for PECs by providing other support that is maintained. So for example, my student support plan gives me materials and access to my tutors that I wouldn't necessarily have if I didn't have a support plan. But in the instance that I have an anxiety attack on the day of an examination, they will take a PEC form into consideration. In terms of fatigue, it is sort of, it's not just you have a student support plan, you can't have a PEC. It would be a bigger discussion involving student wellbeing and your personal tutor.
There's been a lot of discussion on PECs. I just want to drive home how this has literally nothing to do with PECs. This isn't perfect. I'm not saying the PEC system is perfect. What I'm saying is this: if you hand in your late work, if you hand in your work late, this could just have just managed your time badly. You could have literally just not written your essay in time. Like, you could be perfectly healthy. You could have no mental health or physical health or bereavement issues. Sorry, just want to clarification.
Right, okay, we're now going to vote this. Remember, it's an ordinary motion which means a simple majority only. Please have your devices at the ready. Some of them may have logged out by now. Say again? Yeah, is everyone ready? passed. Right. So. Oops. What we have now is student notices. Due to time, we only take about 5 minutes on this, but this is a chance for anyone at council to inform council of any cycling events or anything they feel relevant. Would anyone like to start us off? Just a quick promo for something. Yeah, go for it, Johnny.
You should have all had an email about the annual NUSU survey. I'd urge you to fill it in anyway, but please do, particularly this year, because I've put in a special section at the end that's focused on additional course costs, because that'll feed in the value from the report. So any experience with additional course costs, please let me know, and then we can look at putting recommendations to the university to tackle that. But I really need as many students as possible doing, filling it in, so we've got the best data possible. And if you can promote that in any way, please do.
And just related to that, it's just really useful, like, surveys get sent out the whole time, but surveys are incredibly useful to organisations, particularly this one, to hear your views directly. I think a lot of people obviously feel like sometimes their voice isn't heard. This is a chance to really hear about, just, you know, to leave comments on what you think is wrong in this building, or what you think is great, what you think has been good this year. So it is genuinely a brilliant sort of piece of information and useful for campaigns as well.
On that as well, yeah, like Raf said, it's actually important because from that survey we identified the sort of 6 key things that students want us to focus or campaign on. So it's a really useful exercise that we looked at this year and informed our way this year, so it'll be really beneficial to cycle officers next year.
Just on a community point of view, local elections are coming up in May. There's still time to register to vote in Newcastle. It affects your bin collections, potholes, whatever. So strongly encourage everyone to spread the word, to register to vote, go out and vote in locals on the 2nd of May.
Any other notices for council?
It's just to make you aware that tomorrow is the 15th of March, is the Youth Strike for Climate global strike. In the monument at the 11th, there is a protest. I encourage all of you to go to that. Sometimes here in council we cannot do much about these kind of things, apart like from telling the university to divest from fossil fuels. But I think this is a very important protest for our future, so please go.
Okay. Any final sort of notices to council? Yeah,
Raf mentioned it before, but the President's Debate is happening tomorrow in the Herschel Building in Lecture Theatre 2 from 6 o'clock. If you can't make it, you can live stream it. NUTV and NSR have been doing a fabulous job this week. So I just want to say well done to them and everyone else who's been involved.
Very last one.
Sure. It's going to be Discover Islam Week, as I mentioned when we were doing questions to post officers. Most of the events will be occurring in a big marquee tent, which we set up opposite the Students' Union. Please come by and talk. There's all sorts going on, including readings, food, henna, lots of things that will enable you to start conversations. Hopefully that's the idea. So please come along.
Okay. We now have an open debate. This is normally only about 10 minutes long.
Here's the debate instead. Do you want a debate? All against? All for? All right, we're not doing it.
Okay, no open debate. It's just the raffle time now. Raffle time, and then we can go. Right. You would have all been issued tickets as you came in. Get them ready, make sure you have them. How much are they? £10? Yeah, okay. Up for grabs are 2 £10 into vouchers for one lucky individual here. So, well, 2 lucky individuals. Anyway, so. First number is 401. Anybody, come to your front. Thank you. There you go. Alright. Okay, the next one is 438. If that's you, come to the front. Yeah. There you go. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you all for coming. Please turn up to the next council, last council of the year. It'd be great to have as many people there as possible. Please get casual places, please submit motions, please tidy up and bring all your rubbish with you. And please make sure you fill out the feedback forms that have been provided at the beginning of the meeting. They're really helpful to us. That is the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Yeah.